Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Mind for Mood Summit by Naluri. And my name is Kathy, and I'll be your host for today. So I think now just wanted to share that in view of the World Mental Health Day earlier this month, we are doing a string of 6 webinars today and tomorrow. And so we will cover various topics such as work life balance, like earlier this morning, mood disorders tomorrow, get health, and many others as well, as you can see on the screen right here. And so you will get the chance to hear from the experts directly. And so if you haven't already, I would encourage you to check out the other webinars that is happening in conjunction to World's Mental Health Day. And I will also be pasting the link over in the chat box right now for you to take a look at it later on at the end of this webinar. All right. And so before we welcome our speaker for today, so for today's and the current session right now, we will be talking about building strong relationship. And we will be, the speaker for today would be Sharifa Diana or Diana. But before I go ahead and introduce the speaker, I would like to just quickly run through just some housekeeping rules. As you can see, we are in Vimeo, and so I believe that all of you is currently on the browser. So if there is any technical errors, or you feel like you can't read, or you can't see the slide, or you can't see the speaker, you can't hear very well, feel free to just refresh, and it should directly refresh all of the network and whatnot. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it will all be connected well after you refresh. Okay, and all right, so be curious if you do have any question. Diana's super friendly and super open, so just jot down your question in the chat box, and she would answer as much as she can throughout her session. But if there is any unanswered question throughout the talk, we will be addressing it in the Q&A later on at the end of the day. All right, so last but not important thing, just be your curious self, absorb as much as you can, and please be kind and be polite to each other in the chat section, all right? And so we will now welcome the speaker for today's topic. Diana, over to you.
Hello. Hi. Thank you so much, Kathy, for the introduction and the briefing. Hi, everyone. My name is Sharifa Diana binti Sa Abdul Halim. You can call me Diana. Hi. Thank you for the warm welcome in the chat. I appreciate it. Yes, so I'm really excited to be here today. Just checking in to see how you guys are doing. Are you ready and prepared to be here? Hi everyone. Thank you. Hi. I see some familiar names in the chat as well. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your presence. But yes, as a way to get started, our topic for today is mood matters, building strong relationships. So how do we manage our emotions and our mood a little bit better so that we can get better relationships out of it. So here's a little bit of an overview of what we will go through during our time together today. So we will start with understanding what mood and relationship connection is like. How does that look like? What does that even mean? And then we will also talk a little bit about emotional intelligence, also what it means and how it actually impacts not only us, but also the relationships that we have in our lives, right? And then we will also talk about ways that we can strengthen our relationships by managing our mood a little bit better. Either the things that you've already practiced, or maybe new things you can learn as well. And then we will hopefully try to close the session with a guided mindfulness exercise that all of us, I want to invite all of you guys to try as well. Um, to practice and to try to skills yourself in this session as well, just to see how it is and how you find it, and hopefully it can be a step, the first step to practicing it moving forward. Okay, and yes, just to share that I want to invite you guys to be comfortable, to be respectful with each other, and also just to have a great session, a casual session, in a sense where as much as you can learn from me, I can also learn from you, and you can also learn from each other. So Your interactivity, your comments, your thoughts, your insights, your questions are all extremely encouraged and really, really helpful. So, yeah, I want to encourage both ways. Okay. So, yeah, I will also address the questions in the end, but throughout also, if you have any questions, feel free to ask as well. Okay, with that being said, just a little bit of an introduction about myself. So, I'm a mental health coach here in Naluri, and I'm also a clinical psychologist. So, what that means is essentially I provide assessments and diagnosis for any sort of mental health illness or mental health concerns or mental illness. And besides that, I also conduct one-to-one therapy, mainly about issues that we talk about today. I really, my biggest passion or interest is about mood and emotions, and also interpersonal relationships. And it's really quite a impactful thing that that you can actually benefit in therapy as well. That you learn how to manage it, how to learn some emotional regulation, how to understand yourself a little bit better through understanding your moods, your emotions, and so forth. So yes, thank you for the heart. I really appreciate it. Yes, with that being said, let's get right into it. So we will start with understanding about the mood relationship connection, basically how our emotions shape our connections with others. Okay, so as a way to start, I wanted to ask all of you. So a poll will come up on the chat on your screen on the right, supposedly. That how often do you feel that your mood affects your communication with others? Does it always affect your communication? Is it often? Is it sometimes? Is it rarely? Or is it never? So, yes, I'll give you guys about a minute or so to just take the time to answer. Personally, I would say for my own is it does impact quite a bit. So I would say maybe in the range of either sometimes or often, but I wouldn't say always. So it's a great way to start because you want to build your sense of awareness on how your mood actually is and how it actually impacts not only your relationships but also how you communicate, and vice versa, how you are receiving communication as well. Okay, with that being said, thank you so much for all of your answers. I really appreciate you sharing. We can see that yes, often would be like the majority, where 41% uh, would answer that it does affect them oftenly. Um, and the second largest group is I see is sometimes. So yes, and I would say the smallest group is never. So whoever answered never, please give us your tips. We would really benefit from it, right? Um, but yeah, that would be also something to discuss and to ponder on, right? So this is a great way to start, building your sense of awareness of your current state of emotions, and also your current state of the way you communicate and how that is going and how it actually impacts your relationships. With that being said, let's get right into it. So as just taking it, yes, just taking a moment to share that mood does affect our communication and connection. If you notice that if we're not feeling so great, or if we're stressed out, or experiencing some form of anxiety, it does actually play so a huge role in how we communicate. So an example will be when we're stressed, or when we're exhausted or emotionally exhausted or really, really angry. It's harder to be patient. It's harder to empathize, and it's definitely a little bit harder to even be clear or have clarity in what you're trying to communicate. Because definitely what happens is actually your ability um, to think in an objective way or a rational way does get a little bit more impacted because of the emotional surge that fills in your body, in your brain, right? Uh, there is some hormonal chemical um, activities happening in your brain due to the emotions that does inhibit your ability to be a little bit more objective, a little bit more um, a little bit more clear in the way you communicate, for example. So yes, actually there is some science to it, right? So if you find yourself that, oh, I'm the person that every time I get angry, I have my outbursts or I say really awful things, and then I feel guilty afterwards. And then you have a certain expectation on yourself to from behaving in that way or responding in that way to completely being, you know, eloquent and clear, and when you're even when you're emotionally charged, it wouldn't be setting yourself up for success actually. So that's something to consider, that some parts of it is actually building. It's a practice. It's actually not something that happens overnight. It is a practice and a skill that has to be harnessed and to put a lot of effort into actually building that, right? So yes, going back into this, it definitely impacts, and definitely with mood fluctuations, right? It can actually lead to more conflicts. It can lead to more misunderstandings and actually emotional disconnection, right? And how this happens is, for example, when you're experiencing in like low mood, for example, there inconsistent communication can happen, right? Where your communication style can change, you know, where maybe you're normally quite a patient and a person who is really clear when you communicate, but however, when you know you're feeling anxious or irritable, you might be suddenly passive aggressive or maybe overly critical. So then that can be misinterpreted by others, which then can actually cause confusion, cause a little bit of like inconsistency, cause a rift, and even, yeah, you know, sort of disruptions, and you know, a rift, yeah, basically a disconnection in your relationships, right? I wonder, as I talk about this, I want to ask the audience here, you know, have you experienced that? Is there any sort of does it, you know, remind you of anything, you know? I would encourage you to share if you can. That would be awesome. But yes. Oh, okay. Some people say yes, that they feel this way. Oh, just another sharing, and just another example with how it can actually impact your communication and your connection is that it can actually create emotional distance. So, for some, one spectrum is that they will have outbursts, right? The other side, they might have disconnection. They might unintentionally withdraw. They might isolate to avoid confrontation or to avoid feeling overwhelmed, right? And again, this kind of way of coping with the emotions can be perceived as a form of lack of interest or lack of emotional support, which then can cause a sense of neglect, feelings of neglect or abandonment with the other person in this party, right? It doesn't have to be just with your romantic partner. It can be with your family member. It can be with your friends. It can also be with your colleagues, your managers, whoever that you have a relationship with at whatever extent it can be, right? So yes, and the last thing I wanted to highlight about this is about the emotional assumptions and interpretations that can happen when we are in a state of low mood or experiencing painful emotions such as anger or sadness or even disappointment. We can tend to make negative assumptions about people around us or whatever situation that you're in, right? So, for example, you might interpret a neutral behavior in a negative way. So, for example, yeah, you know, an example I can think of is if you're in a state of like you're angry that people of another matter, for example, and you went to the office and you saw your colleague, and your colleague normally has a normal face, or maybe this time didn't say hi to you. You might interpret that negatively and being like, oh, why is this person being so disrespectful, you know, they're so rude, they're so, who do they think they are, you know? And it's really really hard to, not really hard lah, but it's quick to jump to that kind of conclusion when it comes to when you're in that um, that state of mind, which the emotions can actually trigger or push you to that point. Yes. I'm going to take a moment and read a comment because someone shared. Sometimes when I'm sad, it is hard for me to communicate and convey what I need to feel better, but I'll try my best to let the other person know. Thank you for sharing. Exactly. Actually, you are spot on about that. It's not easy to actually communicate what you need, especially when you are emotionally charged in that moment. So one of the strategies I normally would recommend is telling them beforehand. So having ways to communicate what you need before you are in that situation would be ideal, so that you're not pushing yourself in that scenario um, on what you actually need lah. So it's kind of like you're preparing or helping the other person to help you. So your past self or your present self is helping your future self in that way. So yes, that's one of the strategies. But it's great to see that you are trying your best to let the other person know. So well done and good job. I'm also going to continue reading the questions. I think it's okay being disconnected for a while, and people need to understand that we need space and time, or this is wrong. You're right. Actually, it's okay. Yes. Actually, one of the skills we try to manage our emotions is having it's pausing. So if you're the kind of person that you need to pause in an argument or in any sort of scenario or a disagreement, that's okay. However, um, However, I would say it's important to return to it, or at least to manage the expectations of when you will return to it. It's important that you do return to it, that it's not left hanging lah. So yes, that's important. But thank you for the question. Um, Continuing, sometimes when I share how I feel, it backfires. That's demotivating though. I hear you. It is. I get where you're coming from, because most of the time, that's what I'm sensing. When it backfires, is usually the person that you're sharing your emotions with is unable to receive it well in a way that they hear you and they validate your feelings. So yes, it's not so much about the act of sharing how you feel, but it's more of like whether the person you're sharing your emotions to are actually capable or have the capacity to receive it. Okay, I'm really sorry to hear that. I do hope that one of the ways actually you can reach out to is through Naluri. We have mental health professionals here who are definitely capable and have the capacity to receive you and the emotions that you share. So yes, I'm taking a moment. I often lash out at the people who I'm closest to when I'm emotionally distressed, and I could use really some advice on digesting these negative thoughts. That's a really thank you for sharing, by the way, and for being so vulnerable. I really appreciate everyone's comments and the way you guys are sharing. Yeah, like I said, I really appreciate it. Um, isn't it interesting how we are? I guess we lash out usually at the people that we trust the most. Usually it's because of the trust. We have a sense of safety in a sense of like, oh, I can just release whatever I feel onto this person because I trust that the relationship will remain stable in that sense. However, again, we to be mindful to not take that for granted and to put in effort to repair. So yes, on regarding on advice on digesting some thoughts, we will go through it. So let me continue on the webinar. I see your question. One more question. I will also get to it in later on. Okay. Thank you again. Feel keep them coming. I really appreciate it. I will try my best to answer as much as I can. But yes, to continue on regarding positive and negative emotional states, like I said, it's really important to take care of these things because it does actually impact us, our ability to problem solve, our ability to regulate, and our ability to make decisions. All of that actually does play a huge role actually in our mood and in our relationships, right? So, for example, when we're in a good state of mind, it's easy to be emotionally open or to be patient with others, right? But sometimes we can be when we're in in a more painful state or negative emotional state. It can make us a little bit more impulsive or reactive, and even unkind sometimes, and we might not do it. uh, I wouldn't say like consciously, but I would say more of like, mm, when we actually pause and the emotional wave passes, and the guilt comes in. The guilt is a way to communicate to us, which I will share also a little bit on what. But just to share again on what how it's actually really important, right? Can uh, it definitely can be shown in how we communicate with others, and that can actually impact the quality of the relationship. So the mood is so important actually in ensuring that the relationship or the bond or the rapport stays strong and stays stable, and also is communicated in a way that is appreciated, and there's kindness and there's love and there's also gentleness into it, right? And these are all emotions do, and our emotes actually do play a huge role in it, right? I'm just taking a moment to see. I see people are sharing. I really appreciate it. Yes, they will be flagging the questions, but in the meantime, I will also continue. But yes, I want to talk a little bit about, share with you guys a little bit about emotional intelligence. I want to know which of the emotion that you find most challenging in relationships. Is it anger? Is it anxiety? Is it frustration? Is it stress? Is it sadness? Or is it some other emotion that I didn't list down here that you can share in the chat? Mm, I see. So in the meantime, I will no. Let's go back to the polls. Okay, I'm seeing that it's almost a tie between anger and frustration. Interesting. And the third one would be stress, and fourth would be anxiety. Interesting. I really find this awesome, really informative, and my speculation would be that it's again. Thank you so much for your for your participation. My speculation on why it might be anger and frustration leading is because it is the most overly stimulating emotion in our body, meaning that it's highly arousing. So when we feel anger or when we feel frustration, um, our heart starts to race. We start to be breathless. Our thoughts are usually we racing, sorry, and we are feeling hot and warm, and having it, and it's a feeling of injustice. It's actually communicating a sense of injustice, so you do want to act to protect yourself. So, and that can be tough. How do I regulate my very overly stimulated or aroused body, but to make sure that it's that I'm not hurting the other person. So yes, I really appreciate everyone's feedback. So with that being said, going to emotional intelligence, the first key step is actually building your emotional awareness. So what this means is actually you view your emotions in a way of, what does my emotion want to tell me? Okay, that goes into a stance. The first basic stance we need to address is that we all have emotions. Okay, there is no good or bad emotions. All emotions are important. Okay, it's just that the difference is there are, like I said, highly arousing emotions which are probably uncomfortable, and there are also more comfortable emotions like joy, excitement, contentment, right? So happiness, for example. So again, there's no good or bad emotions. There's no right or wrong emotion also. All emotions are valid. So what that actually means is that it doesn't have to make sense, if that makes sense. Okay. Um, so that also goes into, just because we feel something doesn't mean we're not allowed to feel it. We are allowed to feel it 100%. Like I said, all emotions are valid. However, what we do when we feel the emotions is what counts, is what matters, is what you have to be accountable and responsible for. So this is what goes into responding versus reacting. So if you, for example, are feeling angry and you come back home and you lash out to your family, to your whoever your partner, is that, does that mean you're not allowed to feel angry? No, you're allowed to feel angry. You're allowed to feel frustrated. However, is the act of lashing out a great way to respond or a great way to regulate your emotions? Absolutely not, right? Because you're hurting others and you're also hurting yourself and you're hurting the relationship. So it's, instead of being reactive, we want to pause and we want to be more mindful and to be more responsive. So we are responding to the emotion, which actually builds a sense of control when we do feel something, right? But yes, the whole point of emotions is that it is to help you to communicate from you to you about the decisions that you want to make that aligns with your values, yeah, like I said, to be more aware of what you want in life, what you agree with, what you don't agree with. And this is, as you can see in the picture here, it actually tells you something a little bit deeper. So with anger, anger is a protective emotion. It wants to tell you something that, hey, you are in a state of, you don't feel safe, or you don't feel, you are feeling your boundaries or your values or your stance are being violated right now. I'm trying to protect myself. I'm trying to defend myself. What am I trying to protect, right? And addressing that, lah. Okay, and then it goes into another strong one, which is guilt, right? So that, before that, I wanted to mention, if we are more responsive rather than just reacting based on how we feel, and instead of being more mindful when we respond, uh, it actually induces another set of emotions that normally come, which is guilt and shame. And but however, if we are more mindful with the way we respond, and we feel good about it, we were like, okay, in that really tough situation, I was able to like breathe through it. I was able to pause. I was able to communicate how I felt and what I needed. I feel awesome, So the guilt doesn't come. The shame doesn't come, regardless of whatever the results came out from the situation or the argument or whatever it is, right? The relationship. Because again, relationships is two-way. You can't control what the other person is, but you can control how you respond to it. Okay? So yes, um, these are some of the examples of some of the emotions that helps you to identify what are your needs. But for example, it can just be a simple question of asking yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? What does my sadness want to tell me? What does me missing someone tries to tell me? Or missing is more like yearning, or yeah, nostalgia, oh, what does this feeling of sadness or disappointment is trying to tell me? Okay. Yes, just checking in. Okay, I will proceed. So, yes, another question I want to ask you: how confident are you in recognizing how your mood impacts your interaction with others? So, that this means that, yeah, how confident are you in actually noticing or being able to manage or being aware of your emotions, especially your mood, that you can recognize it in the moment? That's great to see. Somewhat confident, very confident. Great. The first step with managing emotions is always awareness. And not just emotions, also with the thoughts. Earlier, there was a question, right, on how to diffuse, mm, not diffuse, how to manage the negative thoughts. First step is to be aware, what are those thoughts? And then ask yourself, is this thought helpful? Is this thought true? What is a different perspective that I can see from it? So you're doing a combination of challenging those thoughts and also diffusing those thoughts. But the first step is to ask yourself, what am I thinking? What is the thought in question here? Okay, thank you so much for answering. I'm seeing that a lot, I would say like majority, 52% feel somewhat confident in recognizing how your mood impacts. That's great. Awesome. Okay. So yes, like I mentioned, with emotional awareness, a way to build it is to start by naming it. What do I feel? And it's tough. Okay, naming it, it sounds so basic, it sounds so simple, but it really isn't. Sometimes we can feel so many things at the same time, and that's okay. That's also part of being human. It doesn't mean that you're foreign ka, but no, it means that you are human. So sometimes we feel a myriad of things. I feel sad about this, but also angry about that, but also happy about that. So you can feel like it's many things at the same time. So the first step is actually to learn how to name it. And a way to help you to learn how to name it is to refer to the wheel of emotions, or one of the strategies of nowadays is people use chat gpt. I'm feeling, for example, they state out this, they describe the physical sensation or the thoughts that they have, and they ask, what is it that I'm feeling? And sometimes they can give you some prompts to think, and you can confirm and see, oh, is this true kata? I mean, is this true or not? Okay. So yes, and then another way to build it is through journaling. So yeah, to write down your thoughts. And most of the time, you can see the whole point of journaling is actually to build clarity and to give your a way of like the thoughts in your brain that's quite consuming and overwhelming and running all over. There's a way to come out that gives some space in your brain, in your mind, to think a little bit more clearly, and then also gives you another point of view when you verbalize or when you externalize the thoughts that you have, and you can see it and in paper or in phone or speaking to someone, and someone reflects that back to you. It gives you another it gives you some kind of like this thing called psychological distance, where you can take a step back and look at the thoughts again. So yeah, you know so that's one of the ways as well. And another way to build a sense of emotional awareness is through mindfulness practice, which we will try. But the whole point of it is to build your sense of bodily awareness, so that for example, because body and emotions are so interlinked, and it's very, very interconnected. So as a way to do it is, uh, for example, when you, like I said, notice, oh, my heart is racing, I'm feeling hot, I'm clenching, um, my chest feels constricted, I'm frowning, I'm clenching my jaw, I'm so angry. So you are able to, it helps to name your emotions, okay? And again, in any case, if you feel like you need it, you can get extra support through mental health professionals, through therapy. Okay, just take a moment. Yes, before that, I'm going to ask another question. How much do you think your emotional intelligence affects the quality of your relationships? A great deal, somewhat, neutral, not much, or not at all. So with that in mind, I'm going to take a moment to look through the questions, because I see there are quite a bit. um, does MBTI personality got any relations to this? I'm assuming to the mood and to mood and emotions. I wouldn't say if there's a direct correlation, but uh, a closer, if you want to read more on theory, you can read more on attachment theory. So with emotions, yeah, there's definitely a little bit more on our attachments and our secure attachments, insecure attachments, avoidant attachments, anxious attachments, and so forth. That has more relations than rather than the MBTI, actually, I would say. Thank you for the question. How to make ourselves easy to work in a gang environment. When conflict occurs, whole gang will join the conflict and radiate negative vibes. Great question. Thank you for asking this question. It's tough, to be honest. This is actually one of the, like, how actually mood does impact your relationships. It actually does. When there's a lot of negativity, it's called like the emotions are contagious. it can be contagious. So it really depends, I would say, to ask yourself, what do you want from it? Do you care a lot about the relationship? Or part of it is actually, I would say, stay grounded on protecting yourself, and that could be also protecting your peace. So yeah, however that looks like, I'm going to leave it up to you. Okay, thank you for the question. Mm, okay, this is not a question, but this is more of a statement. Sometimes letting others know your feelings or mood doesn't really help, because at the end of the day, they don't really listen. So I'm really sorry to hear this again. Again, thank you for sharing. A lot of times, yeah, we don't necessarily have psychologically safe people in our lives that we can share our thoughts and our feelings, that they're able, like I said, to receive and to be empathetic and practice empathy towards us, um, which is unfortunately really sad. And join me in my journey of trying to make people a bit more empathetic, and also practice active listening by you being here. Maybe you can also share this knowledge and become an advocate yourself. But yes, in the meantime of that process, the two things I would say is, again, to protect your peace, to find people who you do feel safe with, because it's so important to share how you feel, and it's not great to suppress it, because eventually it will come out, either through other ways of other mental health issues, or even physical health issues. So I would definitely don't recommend suppressing it. It's just having to find a safe space, either through other people in your lives, or if you don't, reach out to a mental health professional. Okay, but yes, or another way is through modeling, to model to them, to teach them how do you become an empathetic listener, an active listener. Um, but again, that's not your responsibility, but it would be great if you did that. Okay. Yes, I'm just, yeah. Hearing that, you guys are sharing a lot about feeling dismissed, about feeling invalidated, and that's a big point of a lot of emotional pain, that our feelings are not heard, our feelings are not acknowledged, and they're not being prioritized. So I'm really sorry to hear that. And it's a real issue, and it's a real thing, right? And another, to add on to that, like what I said earlier, another point of it is to build a sense of, how do I validate my own emotions, even when I face invalidation? It's tough, but it's possible. Um, and again, it's a being a bit more assertive. I hear you saying that it doesn't matter, but it matters to me, and that matters. So sometimes it does. It's, I could say, it's a really unfortunate situation. In an ideal situation, you would meet someone who can receive it and validate and acknowledge how you feel. But sometimes in reality, we do also meet people who don't do that, who make you feel like they don't care. Okay, I'm going to proceed, because I'm seeing there's a lot more questions. I really appreciate all the questions, and I really appreciate all the sharings, and I really appreciate how you guys are talking to each other and giving each other some support. Yeah, that's awesome. Sorry, before that, to go back to the poll. Yes, I'm glad to see that a great deal of you guys, majority, like 45% said it actually affects the quality of the relationship. So I'm glad to see that. Yes, which goes into, yes, emotional intelligence in relationships is very significant. Like I said, if you have awareness on how you feel, and then you practice the way to regulate yourself, you understand what you need, you understand what helps and what works for you, then you can be more mindful, and like I would say, like, emotionally agile, and it actually boosts your mental resilience. So in high stakes situations, in work and whatever decisions you have to make, it's, you are able to kind of make space for your emotions, but then also um, do what you need to do, right? yes, it's able to you're able to be present, you're able to yeah, respond more thoughtfully, more mindfully, more intentionally. So then it will then increase your quality of relationships, because also you are aware when, oh yeah, a huge point about emotional intelligence and emotional awareness is that if you are aware of your own emotions, you are also then able to read or to kind of sense the other person's emotions, which helps again to close the gap or create bring the bond together. um, yes, so yeah, and that invites a sense of compassion rather than it's me versus you. It's more of what is the problem. We are, like I said, taking a step back, psychological distance within our emotions. We are making waves. We are allowing our emotions to be there, but we are also not being swept away by the wave of emotions. I would kind of see it like sometimes our emotions can feel like we're like a tornado and we're in the eye of the tornado. We can't see anything. So the psychological distance of taking a step back is to see the tornado. The tornado is still there. We're not doing anything to change the tornado. We're not saying the tornado can't be there, you can't be here, you're wrong to be here. No, we're acknowledging the tornado, but we're also taking a step back, more like witnessing the tornado and allowing yourself to feel, but also being in a sense of control in how you respond within like the scope that you have or the situation that you're in. Sometimes people can't read the room when the vibe is off. Second that. That's the part of emotional intelligence. When you are emotionally aware, you can sense the vibe, right? So yeah, you would be emotionally conscious. Okay. With that being said, let's talk about a little bit on tips on like on management on how to actually increase and strengthen your relationships. So just want to ask, how often do you practice deep breathing in difficult conversations? Do you always do it or often do it or sometimes? I'm going to take a moment also to answer some questions. Hmm. I feel confident in regulating my own emotions, but what's challenging is to navigate the emotions of others. That's called co-regulation. But yeah, it is. Um, when you embark on this journey of trying to help someone else to regulate their own emotions, um, it's it's kind of like a step higher of level of difficulty, because you're dealing with both. Sometimes your emotions can also, you need to regulate your emotions at the same time, and then also have to help this person regulate their own emotions. um, and depending on this person, I'm not sure if it's a child or an adult. I'm assuming if it's an adult, it's a little bit more challenging because they have their own rigid beliefs, their own um, there might be some hesitations or resistance to it lah. But yeah, it is challenging. Thank you for asking, by the way, or for sharing. I really appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to take a second to look at the polls. Okay, awesome. 25, I could see. Majority said sometimes. Okay, good. That is sometimes. Even myself, when I'm angry, yeah, I would say like sometimes or often too. Lah. Not always, because sometimes we forget. But that's the thing about skills. We have to constantly practice to remember so it becomes a habit and almost like second nature. But yes, thank you so much for your for participating and helping me do that. Yes. Okay. Yes. Let's get into how to manage this, right? So the first thing about emotional regulation is to recognize, to be aware of what actually triggers you, um, and look into a little bit deeper. So it's not about in the moment. A lot of times, it's a lot of reflection, stating down, taking a moment out of your day to think about, to journal and to write, or to think about actually when that argument happened the other day, what was I feeling? What was I thinking? What actually made me upset? Or whatever emotion that you felt. What did I do uh, in response to that emotion? Like, so you can learn what your beliefs are, what your emotions are, how it shows up in your body, or what do I feel in my body, and your coping strategies, the way you cope. It's by asking yourself, what did you do with it now? Okay. And the second part is, earlier as I mentioned, is to pause when you are responding. Don't have to rush into it. However, you need to communicate to the other person so that the other person don't feel blindsided, don't feel like you're abandoning them, but it's more of like, I just need a moment to pause. Okay. And then again, to de-escalate your body from that fight or flight mode to relaxation mode, either do deep breathing, take a break, wash your face, drink water, anything that you need to essentially, yeah, to help your body relax again. Okay. So there are many strategies. Some people go for a walk, some people take a nap, anything that helps to regulate your body again. And then, yes, a huge part of it is also self care, right? Are you practicing regular self care? Are you taking care of your basic needs, like your sleep, your nutrition, your exercise? Are you doing stress relief activities? And it's so important that it's not just like once in 6 months, but it's almost like ideally daily, a way after such a long day that you decompress, that you do activities that you find that's relaxing to you to help you to relax and release your stress. Okay. And again, to use mindful communication techniques to pause, to reflect, to respond mindfully rather than being reactive, and then to prioritize relationship building habits. This is again so important because, yeah, because relationship is actually a lot of effort, and this is effort. You, especially when you've been in a long-term relationship or even a new relationship, right? Sometimes you're not avoiding arguments. Arguments are bound to happen because you can't always see eye to eye all the time. And sometimes disagreements happen because we are humans. That's okay. The point of it is, how do we repair? What is our effort to repair and to build that bond again? To feel like we are connected, to feel like we are, yeah, connected, I would say. And then again, being mindful in our relationships and how we communicate, trying to be present in the moment by showing that you are present, that you're giving eye contact, that you're not busy on your phone or you're busy doing something else. Try your best to be focused, to be present, to show them that you are present. Try to avoid assumptions and judgments. And judgments can be negative or positive. Just to not assume, essentially, if you think you know the answer, if you think you know what they're going to say next, keep it in your brain. Ask them, what would you say next? What are you going to say next? What made you say that? What happened here? I think I know. I think I know. I think I know. You think you know. It's okay. You can have a game with yourself. I think I know, right? Keep it to yourself. See whether I'm correct or not. Okay? So, but you ask. Don't try your best to not assume. Try your best to not jump to conclusions. And again, to try to speak with intention and clarity. What is your purpose with whatever you're trying to say? Is it to hurt the other person, or is it to share how you felt instead? And what you want at the end of the conversation or at the end of the day. Yeah, and again, trying to practice empathy. A way to practice empathy is, again, to avoid assumptions, to avoid thinking that you know it all, but it's more of asking, trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes, meaning you build a sense of, you get as much information as possible. You're not saying, oh, my experience is like this and this, but it's more of like, oh, what is this person's experience? Wow, hearing that sounds so tough. That sounds really difficult. Like, I can't imagine going through that, for example. So that's how you build your sense of empathy, right? And again, it helps to improve your listening by, again, focusing on the other person's perspective, which is a form of building empathy. So yes, another question and a poll question: which strategy, sorry, do you find the most effective for improving your mood and relationships? Is it practicing mindfulness, engaging in self-care, open honest communication, taking breaks to cool down, seeking external support? I'm going to take a moment also to look at the questions. The most difficult emotion to regulate for me is anxiety. Yes, it feels like my body has been hijacked. I've lost control of both mind and body. Yeah, I get that. Talking to someone helps me to calm down, but I wish I don't have to be dependent on others. I hear you. It is tough. Um, Thank you for sharing. I would say it's a great way that you found a way to regulate, which is through talking to someone. Is just to build on your arsenal for that. It's just finding other ways that you can also. It's not to completely shut that down, but it's just to find other ways. What works for me also lah. So you can do grounding. You can do whatever it is grounding techniques, which is the 5 4 3 2 1, deep breathing as well, or any sort of breathing techniques that you find helpful. Um, yeah, eating something sour helps to also regulate your anxiety. But yeah, sometimes talking to someone is the most effective one of all, and that's okay. Okay, looking back at the poll, thank you again for sharing. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we can see that majority really need to cool down. I say, uh, thank you for sharing. Yeah, good to see that, and also engaging in regular self care. Again, that's so important to take care of ourselves. So yes, I just want to continue. Um, Again, thank you so much for sharing, for your interactivity, for your questions, for your comments, and for your polls. I really appreciate it. Going back into why actually doing all of this matters, I think I've kind of shared a little bit earlier and throughout the session, which is that again, in the end of the day, what is your intention of being here? What is your intention of trying to regulate your mood, of trying to do something for your relationship? Is to strengthen your bond, your connection, and your sense of quality of relationship through trust. And it's also a way to set some standards and boundaries of being respectful, of being gentle, kind, and honest in the way you communicate. That emotions are allowed to be here, but how do we do it? How do we how do we still have this conversation even with the emotions being here in a respectful, gentle, and kind, honest way? Okay. Yes. And again, when you are emotionally aware, you're practicing emotions, you're building your sense of emotional intelligence, you're also practicing a sense of safety within your relationships by understanding what vulnerability is, what vulnerability looks like, and what vulnerability requires, which is that we are being respectful, we're being kind, we're not judging, we're not, we're not rushing into it as well. We are taking pauses and allowing for our emotions to be here, right? And again, to overall increase your quality of the relationship and satisfaction you get from the relationship is so important. With that being said, I want to invite you guys to take a moment to let's do a quick mindfulness exercise. So I'm gonna invite you guys to sit down and either close your eyes or you can look down. Essentially, to put your feet on the floor, your hands you can put on your lap or on your chest and your stomach. Or if you feel comfortable, you can hold your hands like this, whichever you feel most comfortable. So we're just gonna take a couple deep breaths in through the nose and through out the mouth. Take another deep breath in. So what we want to do is we want to intentionally slow down the breath, slow down our bodies, open our chest a bit more so that we can receive more air. Being mindful and intentional with your breath in and out. So, with each breath you take, we want you to take it a tad bit slower, a tad bit deeper. Just allow yourself to enjoy the stillness if you can in your mind, in your heart, and just exist and be. If you notice any sort of emotions, they're welcome here. They're allowed to be here. And trust that as they come, and if you allow them to be and come, they are also allowed to go. Okay? Gonna take two last deep breaths and slowly return. One more deep breath in and out. In and slowly out. Okay? Thank you so much for trying out this exercise with me. I appreciate it. I just want to ask if you are willing to share and if you tried it, let me know how was the exercise. Did you find it hard? Did you find it um, helpful? Did you find it any sort of reflections? Thanks for the thumbs up. I appreciate it. Definitely calmer. Yes. Thank you for that. Relaxing. That's the whole point of mindfulness is that we want to bring back ourselves to the present because most of the time when we're anxious or when we're angry we do spiral into the future. So we just want to bring it back here to be grounded here. Okay? So yes, just to thank you so much for your sharing and for definitely trying it out with me. That's hopefully you can use that when you experience any sort of emotions running high and that time. Okay, just to share a little bit as a way to conclude, to build healthy relationships through emotional awareness is to be aware how it impacts what are you feeling, and again, emotional intelligence is the key. Practicing mindfulness, relaxation techniques, and self care to improve your ability to regulate emotions. And as a way to improve your communication skills, is to practice empathy, mindfulness, mindful communication, and as well as, again, being aware of your own emotions to be able to regulate them. Okay, so yes. Thank you so much. I'm just gonna briefly share a little bit about some of the resources that a little bit what Naluri provides. So in any case you need some urgent support, if you're in a crisis, we do have a free 24/7 hour care line and text line according to the countries here. So they're completely private and confidential, and they are meant by professional counselors. So they know and they are trained on what to do and to how to support you. And then we also have a free Naluri emotional well-being assessment. So if you're conscious or if you're concerned about your current emotional well-being, this is a great way to start. Again, it's anonymous and it's free for everyone. So scan the QR code. It's only 7 questions. It's really, really quick to know how your current emotional well-being is in conjunction to our World Mental Health Month this month. Okay. Yes. And then we also have a mood journal in our Naluri app. It's something really cool and updated. So you can definitely you can download and update your Naluri app here to get the new mood journal. You can choose a list of 36 moods to basically capture how you're feeling. And if you do it on a daily basis, then you can get like an actual graph or like an overview of how your mood has been, and which again it's a form of great um, insight towards how your emotional well-being is on top of doing the emotional well-being assessment. So yes, and if you need further support like individualized and personal one-to-one sessions, we do have Notary consultations. If you're interested with, for example, because I like myself as a way to do therapy, this is the way you can do it, even with for myself, for example. So yes, we have one-to-one Notary remote consultations to work on anything beyond than just whatever we've discussed today. But yes. Yes, and yes, this is a way to for you to download the Naluri app or to use it on the web to chat with our Naluri mental health coach. If there are any questions that I didn't get to cover today, I really apologize. Again, I appreciate all the questions, and you can direct the questions as well to your to the Naluri mental health coach on the app. Okay, and yes, thank you. Yes, you will get the slides. You can download the slides at the handout portion. I will leave that the team will make it downloadable. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Diana, for sharing. That's really, really good and insightful session. And thank you so much, everybody who has been so open and so engaged and just encouraging to one another. And this is the kind of community that we want to see forming among just Naluri members, right? So if you have learned one new thing from Diana today, please remember to share your feedback. So in a bit, I will be sharing and publishing a link over. There you go. Yeah, so that we are aware of your experience throughout this whole session today. And if you're curious to just really learn more about other topics that we have lined up tomorrow, feel free to also take a look at the link that I just sent in the chat box as well. And later on, at the end of the session, before we close, I will be shooting out another message for the handout so that you can click the link and download the PDF for your future reference. Now, we did not sell. Okay, give me a moment. Sending it over. All right, there you go, Cindy. That's your handout. Yeah. All right, the end. So I think that is all for today. Thank you so much, everybody. For those who's coming back for the webinars tomorrow, I'll see you tomorrow. Until then, you guys have a good rest of the day ahead. Bye.